Okay, so we are going to be discussing the real-time collapse of America. America, it's on the downswing, it's on the decline, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. Really, the problems are easy to fix, but it's just incompetence in our leadership. So let's watch this video saying we are in trouble, prepare now, by Robert Kiyosaki. So let's watch this.
Now, I can't believe how bad it's gotten. I mean, it's here. We all know we're screwed. The question is, if it's going to get worse, what do we do? The good news is this: if it gets worse, you still have time to prepare. That is money supply. It's M2. Just too much money in the system. But the question is, so what's going to happen? Let's say they raise interest rates, they push us into a recession. That's going to crush a lot of small businesses, and if prices go up, I think the problem is in the bond market.
That's already happening. They've already increased the interest rate, and small businesses have been getting crushed, absolutely crushed since the pandemic. They can't keep up with wages. They have to constantly increase their prices, and they can't compete with businesses like Walmart. When was the last time you seen a small business convenience store or a market? You don't see them anymore. Why? Because they can't compete with these giant corporations.
That's my concern. Then the repo market, which is short term, as short as it gets. So I'm watching all this stuff. I want to know what a person can do.
In 1913, the Fed is the third central bank America has had because every president has warned against central banks like the Bank of England. And the Fed is not federal, it has no reserves, and it's not a bank. It's a cartel of banks. And in 1913, the Fed, the third one, was created, starting with President Washington, said, do not have a central bank. Since, what, 70?
All of these warnings from our founding fathers, warning explicitly never, ever, ever to have a central bank. Now, they knew how bad central banks were back then. So imagine how much damage a central bank can do in today's times with all this technology, all this manipulation in the markets, and all this digital financing systems. It can utterly wipe out the middle class single-handedly. It's the most dangerous thing to our economy. Nothing else is more dangerous than the central banking system.
1976. Not only was the Fed created in 1913, so was the taxman. The Beatles always sang about the taxman. Well, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was passed, which caused America to be taxed. And almost up to that point, till 1913, America was a tax-free nation.
Tax-free nation. Now that is the real definition of freedom. Now, taking money directly out of your check, which is basically government-sponsored theft. It's literally theft, taking your labor out of your check involuntarily, and you're not even getting anything back. A lot of people that are the working class don't really use up that much government resources. Most people, the only thing they use from the taxes, from the welfare state, is the roads. That's it. People don't get all these benefits. Most people don't get all of these benefits. So they're paying into something and they're never getting anything back. And then they give you the promise of Social Security. Well, it'll be worth it when you pay Social Security and you get to retire. No, there won't be a Social Security in like 50, 60 years when most of the working class is an old age. You have people nowadays working until they're like 70, into their 70s and 80s, still not able to retire. Do you know how utterly insane that is? To steal money out of your paycheck and get nothing in return. I could understand if we got something like free healthcare, some sort of free food system, but we don't get that. We don't get that. We get some promises, we get bureaucracy, and we don't get any real essentials. Our school system's trash. Our food is poison. What are we getting? What are we? The government isn't doing its job. It's not. It's supposed to be regulating these monopolies. It's supposed to be regulating the freaking food to make sure it's safe to eat, to make sure it's not pumped full of sugar and chemicals. But it's not doing that. It's not doing that. So what are we paying them for? They failed in every part of their job description, which is to keep us safe, well, not safe, but healthy at least, to make sure our freedoms are preserved. And they failed in every single way.
So what does that tell you? For money to exist, taxes had to exist. Hear me out. For money to exist, the dollar or the pound, taxes had to exist. So it was one of the biggest scams going. And that's why 1913 is so important. And then in 1944, as World War II was winding down, the world agreed to make the US dollar the reserve currency of the world, which it is today, if America promised to keep it backed by gold.
They lied. They're like, yeah, I'll keep it backed with gold. And then like a few decades later, they just pulled it off the gold back. They said, we're no longer backing this with gold anymore. And everybody just casually accepted it. Like, could you imagine putting your money into something, thinking it will be backed by gold, and then the person you expected to keep it backed by gold just said, no, we're no longer backing this with gold. It's just paper dollars now, backed with nothing. Could you imagine how pissed you would be? And we wonder why, like, half the world hates us, probably more than half. It's because we don't keep our promise. We don't keep our promises at all. At all. We do not keep our promises, and we are hypocrites. We are hypocrites. We're a country that was founded on the idea of freedom while holding slaves. it's so hypocritical.
So in 1944, the United States says, we promise we'll back it by gold. And then in 1971, President Nixon says, oops, we broke our promise. And that allowed money printing to go out of control. So here we are today. I just got this. It just came in. It's The Economist from London. And it says here, governments have spent $17 trillion on the pandemic, including loans and guarantees, for a combined total of 16% of the global GDP. That's how much money was printed last year.
We printed 16% of the global GDP. That is a massive, absolutely ginormous amount of money. So we're wondering why we have so much inflation. Oh, we'll just print all this money and hand it out to all these corporations and businesses. And look at us now. We are going through the biggest inflation crisis in our country's history. Prices have doubled. Some prices have even tripled. People can't keep up with basic expenses. People can't even keep food on the table. You know, I went to McDonald's the other day and a freaking cheeseburger cost like $10, $12. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And Wendy's is even more expensive. A freaking Baconator costs like $15. What in the world is going on? And KFC, if you live in California at least, a small bucket of chicken costs $70. $70 for a small bucket of chicken. That's like 90% of the minimum wage paycheck. If you work an entire day for 8 hours a day and you take that paycheck and you spend it, 90% of that money, your daily income, would go to that bucket of chicken. That's how little the wages are compared to the rapid, absolutely rapid rates of inflation and the prices of goods.
16% of the global GDP. Now, if that doesn't cause you to run out and buy gold and silver, I don't know what will. They now have to keep printing or we crash. That's why I've been bullish on gold for all these years. You watch who's spending the money. It's the government. I don't trust them. I never have. So, I mean, they're so incompetent. I just can't believe it. They're incompetent people. They're like Marx, highly educated people who don't know how to make money. They're not capitalists, they're socialists. And if you understand that, in a few years, you're going to find out these banks are in.
Now, realistically, we are living in a socialist country. The problem is that our tax money doesn't go to things like healthcare, doesn't go to things like food, doesn't go to things like housing, and instead goes to the monopolies, the corrupt politicians. It very rarely goes back into the hands of the people. Okay, in a real society, in a just society, companies like BlackRock wouldn't exist. Do you think BlackRock doesn't have a hand in today's politics in America? They are taking those billions of dollars that they make in profit and feeding it back to those same politicians that are supposedly supposed to be regulating them. We have entire neighborhoods, in some cases, entire cities being bought up, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, and being hoarded by one or two corporations. They own all the housing. And you know what they're doing? They're taking those houses and they are not selling it. They wouldn't dare sell it. They are only renting it out. They are not selling the homes. They are not offering mortgages on the home, except for people who's going to pay an extremely high price. But they are turning it into rentals, and overpriced rentals, mind you, that they can profit off of to the maximum. So say goodbye to the American dream. Say goodbye to a house with a picket fence, to a car. You will be a permanent renter, which means you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Serious trouble because of debt, because all the Fed and the Bank of England know how to do is print more money. And as long as people will accept this toilet paper like this, people are happy. But the moment one day somebody says, oh my God, $10 billion, well, it's not worth it. I was in Zimbabwe. This wouldn't buy me an egg. What's screwing us all up are academics. The academic elite, the liberal left and all this, I don't know where their heads are at, but they're not up in the air. And so the Fed fits into that category, the Bank of England fits into that category. They're doing all these projections and all this, but they're not attached to reality. When you look at the numbers, is that we're already in a depression.
Yes, that is very true. We are in a depression. We are in the worst economic state in American history. Just look how many people cannot afford basic housing. A job used to be able to afford a house, a car, land, at least. Now people can't afford those things. So the American dream is dead. You have people like 40, 50 years old still renting, still living paycheck to paycheck. By that measurement, America is doing worse than the Great Depression.
In other words, if the economy's been growing at 3%, it's only growing at 2%. That's a technical depression. So people watch, the stock market's up, everybody's happy and all this, but everything's inverting upon us. So just recently, the euro-dollar curve inverted. Every time that has happened, it was followed by Lehman Brothers and it was followed by COVID. America is going Marxist. And when I look at what's going on in Portland and Seattle and New York and Chicago and the cities, I mean, how in the world can we defund police and all this? How in the world can we keep printing money and doing what we do? So I started storing gold in Switzerland and in Singapore.
If things really start to collapse large scale, because if the America collapses, pretty much like half the world will also collapse because a lot of countries base their economy on the US dollar. And gold, yes, it has value for sure. But if you want to buy some food, want to buy bread, can you really go all the way to Switzerland and then use a gold bar to buy bread? No, because people would bang you over the head, take your gold, and kill you because everything's collapsed. So yeah, it's like a false sense of security. Oh yeah, I'll have gold, then I'll be fine. In a collapsed world, you will see a situation like we see in Yemen, where there's just non-stop civil war, warring tribes, warring political factions. You will see that, and it will go on indefinitely everywhere. For like half the world will be in a state of civil war because the power structure will have lost all validity and people will just want to battle for control of the power. Because once there's a power vacuum, you have a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of warring factions, and it takes generations for nations to stabilize after a huge collapse like that. So yeah, you could say, oh, I have gold, I'm good, but you can't guarantee the safety of that gold. You can't even guarantee that you'll be able to trust the economy or put it into the current economy. Who will you give it to? Who's going to buy your gold? What are they going to buy your gold with? Don't even have anything to freaking sell your gold for. Okay? Because there is no currency. And all this will happen, and then they will instill let's say, a virtual one world currency. They use that as an excuse. They use all the instability to say, hey, all this instability because we don't have a stable currency. So let's make a one world currency, a one world digital currency, and then everything will be fine. Then we'll have this one world government so we don't have all these warring factions fighting amongst each other. Perfect excuse. And if, let's say, they do make a one world currency, which if they do, it's over. It's over already. You're already slave. You won't be able to really trade your gold. You won't be able to sell your gold because it will be illegal. So the number one thing you can do to make sure we're secure in the terms of our lives and our wealth is to make sure the world doesn't go mad. You make sure people are aware of the situation and what they can do to prevent this one world currency system. That is what you do. You don't wait till the last minute and say, oh, I'm not going to do anything. I have gold. And then they use this situation as an excuse to put a digital currency, one world government. You don't wait that long. You try to prevent it. You try to talk about it right now before it's too late.
So in case I had to run, gold and silver are flight capital. And the problem is most people don't know the difference between a Marxist and a capitalist. Economics taught in military school are different than the economics taught in business school. Military economics is different than civilian economics. So in military school, this is in the 60s, my economics teacher said, who kills more people? It was socialist or capitalist. And the answer is socialist. You know, the Nazi Party was a National Socialist, whatever we call it. They killed 18 million people, 6 million were Jews. Stalin,
Well, we are forgetting the dozens of colonial genocides committed by capitalist countries. Um, King Leopold of Belgium, he lived in a capitalist country. He killed like 20, 10 to 20 million Africans in all the colonial empires. All of them were capitalists, and they killed a lot of people. Okay, Spain during the Spanish colonial years, millions upon millions of people were dead. Now, obviously, I don't think that the socialism, the quote unquote socialism of the 20th century is good, because it was really communism, which I don't think is the same as socialism. But obviously, there's a fine line there. But yeah, Stalin, Mao, terrible people, but these are communists. These are not really socialists. Nazi Germany, socialist, it was more like an imperialistic empire. It was militarism more than it was socialism. So I don't think we should put these nations in categories, because there's one common denominator with all nations that have killed millions of people all throughout history. They were all corrupt. They all had concentrated power. They were not really democratic. They did not have a choice, like freedom of speech, all the like. They were all brainwashed. So that is the common denominator. Authoritarianism is the common denominator. I think the style of economy doesn't really matter as much when talking about the how much people a country kills, because you could just look at capitalist countries and you say, oh, they killed a lot of people too. So I think we should really focus more on holding the government accountable, because countries like Nazi Germany, they were never held accountable. Countries like Soviet Union never held accountable. None of these countries were held accountable. Their leadership was never held accountable. They just did whatever they want. The civilians were subjects. They did not have freedom. They did not have choice. They either do whatever the regime says or they get killed. That is the common denominator. The economy really has nothing to do with that. It's more about the rights of the civilians, the amount of say civilians have, and how much freedom there is among the civilians. Your nation is the civilians. The civilians make up the government. They are supposed to be the commanders of the government. If the government doesn't listen to them, they'll just run wild, do whatever they want. So that's the common denominator. All this, oh, socialism, oh, that's evil. Socialism is evil. It kills people. No, that's not true. In some form, America right now is a socialist country, because we have Social Security. We have a bunch of social programs. We have public roads. We have a publicly financed military. We can, oh, why do we have a publicly financed military? Shouldn't we have a private military? That's how dumb that is. Everything is social. Everything that has to do with the government is socialism. Everything. So if you get anything from the government, you are literally a socialist. It's the dumbest argument. If we were living in a true free market, America would just be run by just one giant corporate monopoly. Okay? And it will operate as a form of government, just on the private, in the private sector instead of the public sector.
The USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, killed 26 million people. Mao Zedong killed 46 million people. Pol Pot in Laos and Cambodia, they killed 15 million people. So the reason Americans go to war is to fight that. we fight for capitalism. So the reason my uncles went to fight and an uncle fight in Korea.
Yeah, we quite literally do fight for capitalism. We fight for the military-industrial complex. We fight for Lockheed Martin, literal corporations. Yeah, but we don't fight anything on ideological level anymore. We don't fight for freedom. We don't fight for free speech because we just overthrow governments on the other side of the world. We install coups all over the world. Even if they, let's say a foreign country democratically elects a leader, if we don't like that leader, we will send in the CIA, overthrow the government, have a coup, and put in a dictator. So does that sound like it's for freedom, democracy, capitalism? No, no. It hasn't been about that in a very long time. The last time America fought for freedom was during the Civil War.
Is to fight socialism. If you study the Communist Manifesto, it's really simple to see. Communist Manifesto, it was designed, what Marx said, was to take people from agrarian into totalitarian. But to get there, they needed capitalists to set up, take them from agrarian to industrial. So once the capitalists were in place and they set up an industry, so what's going on? What happened in China? Mao came to power, and Mao was, China was an agrarian society. So Deng comes in and he says, to be rich is glorious. He was the first capitalist guy. He was bringing in capitalism to China. And now you have Xi, who is emperor for life, totalitarian for life, and they're killing the people in Hong Kong who are capitalists. The odds are Taiwan is next. As I say, as a former US Marine, I fought for capitalism. Unfortunately, America is going socialist, Marxist, and eventually totalitarian. So my money is out of this country.
Now, in what way is America going socialist? Even more socialist than we are now. Now, yes, I agree. There are socialist elements within America, but when you look at things like the housing market and the economy in general, you have a handful of corporations controlling most of the economy. In the housing market, you have BlackRock. In retail, you have Walmart, Target, all these big box store retail markets. You have a handful of companies controlling things. You don't really have a government run public grocery store. You don't have a government run public housing market. You don't have things like that. Really, all we get is publicly financed roads. Um, a few people are allotted food stamps, which really isn't publicly public food. It's more like an IOU from the government saying, "Hey, this is free food. The government will pay you." It's not really food. Okay, pretty much 90% of our economy is in the private sector. So I don't know what this guy is talking about. You have literal tent cities in places like California. And need some water. And it's just crazy because we could easily fix this. We could easily make a publicly financed housing, public housing that can house every single American in this country. We could easily do that. We could easily pay in to the government, say, "Hey, I'll pay you for 10 years in in the promise that at some point I will get a publicly financed home." But of course we don't do that because we'd rather have houses cost like $600,000 for a 2-bedroom house, which isn't sustainable at all. Most 90%, 99% of Americans cannot afford $600,000. So of course they'll have to take out a loan that they will for sure foreclose on. It's a scam.
It's been out of this country for years. And I'm getting to run just like the people are running out of New York City, Chicago, Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco. Well, it actually started, in my opinion, because I'm the baby boomer. The Marxists knew, or the socialists knew, the way into the U.S. was through the students. And you look at what's happening today, our schools are out and out teaching kids Marxism and socialism. So the freedom of speech is gone. That's why I'm concerned, is we're going more and more Marxist. But it actually started in September 17th, 2019, when the repo market went crazy. The repo market interest rates went from like 2% to 10%. But that was indication that the Fed and the Treasury were going bankrupt. So what happened when the repo market went crazy in 2019, the Fed and the Treasury stepped in and took over the repo market. And then they started manipulating prices. So that was September 2019, December 2019.
Now, obviously, blatant market manipulation is never a good thing. If you manipulate the market instead of fixing the root causes of poverty, like lack of jobs, inequality, you will just get the same thing a few years later, or you'll just make it way, way worse.
Oh my God, COVID, Wuhan. Right. So I criticized that. I said, there's something fishy going on. Well, as you know, if you criticize any of that stuff, vaccines and all that, the mob comes after you. You look at the doctors who
agree with that. I very much agree with that.
Said, COVID is BS. They get fired. They get taken off.
Exactly.
If that's not Marxist, if that is not the First Amendment being destroyed.
Now, I'm not sure what COVID has to do with Marxism. Does anybody know the connection? Because I don't get the connection between what happened in 2020 and Marxism and socialism. I just don't get it. He's saying COVID is Marxism? Makes no sense.
I don't know what is. And then to get accused by the Washington Post, which is Bezos' bunch, and I have no defense. The question I have is this.
So he says he hates Marxism and socialism, then he says he hates Jeff Bezos, which is like the definition of capitalism. So it just seemed, and he was going on and on earlier about saying, I fought for capitalism in the military. Then he says he hates Jeff Bezos. If you're a capitalist, you should love Jeff Bezos. You should love these handful of billionaires that control everything in the media, that control all the flow of information. You should love Jeff Bezos. So why criticize Jeff Bezos saying he is irresponsible? He's promoting something you don't like. And you're saying you don't think Jeff Bezos should have that much power. Then you're not a real capitalist. Then you don't like capitalism because you don't like the billionaire class having so much power.
Biological warfare. That's my question. Being a military guy, a Marine, I'm not that bright. But I get suspicious. See, those are the questions that suspicious minds ask. When I look at that, I say, how does this Fauci have the power to basically destroy capitalism when the facts state that COVID does kill people, but it kills a certain group of people? It doesn't kill everybody. And so those are the questions, I've always had as a person who, not that I don't trust my country, I just don't trust them. Globalization is very, very left. There's a correlation between prosperity going to China and other countries and jobs leaving country. You look at what happens. So guys like me, I make more money when jobs leave, truthfully, because my manufacturing is done in China and Taiwan and Korea. And so we just recently, this is before COVID, we started bringing our manufacturing back to the States. We've got to get back to protecting the worker and the jobs. Now that goes against the liberal point of view.
Wait, you're saying protect the worker? Sir, isn't that socialism? Isn't that Marxism saying the worker needs to be protected? Shouldn't we protect the CEOs and all these rich people? So this guy's kind of a hypocrite. He himself is rich and he's saying, I like capitalism. Then he's saying, I don't like rich people and we need to protect the worker. Well, sir, that's socialism. That's that's literally the definition of socialism, protecting the average person, the working person, and making sure the billionaires don't have unlimited power.
View, what happens to the worker? That's my concern. I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I am a capitalist.
He's a hypocrite. Okay, he says protect the worker. Then he says, "Oh, but I'm a capitalist." Saying you're a capitalist means you believe in capital. People who have and own capital, like businesses, land, um, property, companies. That's what a capitalist means. People who own capital. Now, the working class, we, for the most part, don't own any capital. So when you say protect the worker, you are anti-capitalist by definition. So I don't think this guy really knows what capitalist means. He doesn't know what Marxism means. He doesn't know what socialism means, because America in its current form is a socialist country, but it's just ran poorly. It's just corrupt. It's just inefficient. It's imperialist because we spend so much money on military bases all across the world instead of actually on our own people. We don't spend anything on housing. We let these monopolies do whatever they want, corrupt our Congress with lobbying. So we are a corrupt socialist country where our money is being misspended, our inflation is out of control. We are a constitutional, corrupt socialist country. Okay, we are not capitalist, because if we were capitalist, we wouldn't have a government at all. Everything would be ran on the private sector. Um, we would vote on what we want. The people directly would vote on what we want every year. We vote on which companies we want to run parts of our government. We would contract, have contractors working as a military. We wouldn't have a publicly financed military. We wouldn't have a publicly financed police force. We wouldn't have a publicly financed firefighters. We wouldn't have a publicly financed school system. We are a socialist country. But I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just letting him know that we are, by definition, a socialist country. This guy's acting like America's for capitalism. What makes America good is capitalism. That's not true. What makes America good is freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and the fact that we the people are put first. In other countries, the top brass of the government is put first. So I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Yeah, he's speaking with emotion. There's emotional music playing in the background, but for the most part, I think like he's 50-50 on everything. He's half right and half wrong.
I studied economics in military school, not business school. I did go to business school.
Click the link in the description and make a deposit to claim your free
Okay. Yeah, so
stocks.
this is we are in trouble, prepare now. So he did make a few good points, mostly with the hyperinflation, mostly with the pandemic stuff. Now when he just started rambling about Marxism, socialism, blah blah blah, he lost the plot, because now he's buying in to the left right paradigm. Now me personally, I think there's a lot of stuff on the right that is good. And I think there's a lot of stuff on the left that is good. I think they take these few good things and put them on the left, and take these few good things about us and put them on the right. And then each side has bad things. And on the other side, there's bad things too. And they use these to divide us. So we can never get the whole cookie. We always have to be fighting over half a cookie. So it's just one giant scam. Two-party system, utter failure. We should just dissolve all parties within this country because we can get nothing done. We can't get anything done. We should vote for individuals, not parties. We should vote for ideas, not parties. Because the party system has only served to create a system of tribalism that has gotten us nowhere within the last 50, 60, 70 years. We have not made any progress within the last 70 years. We've been on a constant decline since World War II. And that's without question. People who are saying America is the strongest it's ever been, they're just delusional. Period. Delusional. If you see the people of the Gen Z, the next generation, you will see they're angry. They're struggling. They are not satisfied with the way things are going. They know it's unfair. They know the system needs to change. So, do you think in the next 10, 20 years you will have a strong, loyal workforce? No. People are going to be quiet quitting. People are going to be trying to work an independent job. In the year 1910, 90% of Americans were entrepreneurs. Now, almost 90% of people work for some sort of corporation. They don't even get to meet their boss. They don't even shake hands with their boss anymore. They are just a cog in a machine. So these are the real problems with America. Yeah, you could throw out phrases like Marxism, socialism, but really, America is a socialist country in some forms, in some ways. So, yeah, if you guys liked my commentary on this video, like, comment, and subscribe.